Hello everyone. Today we are going to be looking at 7 easy sketchbook exercises that you can do for relaxation. My name is Leah. I'm an artist and creator, and here on YouTube I like to share different ways that you can use art as a tool towards healing. So let's dive right into today's activities with idea number 1. All you need is a sketchbook, paint, I'll be using watercolors for this, one paintbrush, and a black pen of some kind. You can go with a fine liner, Sharpie that you can find in your junk drawer, or a brush pen art-based marker. You'll also want to have water on hand so that way you can clean and rinse off your paintbrush and pre-wet your palette. What we're going to do for this activity is just grab some paint and make a circle. Grab some more paint, make a circle. And these circles don't have to be perfect. You can clean your brush between painting and picking up colors, or you can just mix as you go. The point of today's activity for this one is to overlap colors, layer them next to each other. Just start making circles. Try to mix up the sizes. Have small circles, big circles. You'll find that I'm sticking to the same grouping of colors. So I'm not overcomplicating it by using every single color in my palette. I'm sticking to my opera pink, my nickel azel yellow, I'm pretty sure that's what it is, my bright rose, and my ultramarine. And I'm just dipping in too with dirty paintbrush and mixing some of these colors together. At this stage, once you feel like you have enough circles, it'll all come down to personal preference, but I like to still see a bit of the white page peeking through. But if you wanted to, you could just keep going and cover the entire page and get rid of all the white space. But now we want to let this dry, so either dry it ourselves or let it sit and dry. Now that this one has dried, it looks so pretty. I love how the colors are blending into one another and layering on top of each other. You could easily just leave it as it is. Or you can go on top and play with it even further, which is a really fun thing to do because you can do this, say, on a Monday, and 2 weeks later, when you have that need to doodle or express, you can come back to this page and do something with it. So what I'm gonna do is actually just like continue those circle shapes. I really like this one here. My circles aren't perfect. That's fine. Yeah, I think that's good for now. And I made a slight boo-boo here, but that's okay. I can use that to my advantage and then kind of like create a little pattern around it. But what I want to do today is draw little faces. So that could be kind of like maybe hair and then eyes. This isn't about being perfect. This is just about playing and having fun. I think my nose is gonna look like this with a little nose piercing and like a little smile with that little, yeah. You can just really play with it and do something expressive. You can draw the emotions that you're feeling, or you can just channel that inner child and just draw some funny faces like you would have done as a kid. If drawing faces isn't your thing, that's okay. You can draw designs inside of them. You can just draw different shapes on top. In the end, the doodle section of this activity is all about what gives you joy and relaxation. If you'd rather do some other kind of drawing on top of this and not be doing anything playful or childish, that's perfectly okay. Go with sophistication or abstraction. Do what makes you happy. All right, let's move on to idea number 2. For the next one, the supplies that we're going to be needing are some tape. I'm going to be using 2 different widths of tape and some drawing materials. So I have some neocolors here, this woody stabilo, whatever, and some markers. And I went with a color theme. The first step for this one is to tape off the edges. Once you have your edges taped, pull out the smaller tape or take your larger one and cut it a little slimmer. You don't have to go that extra route, but personally I like having thinner lines when working in a smaller size sketchbook. It just gives you more surface to draw on. And all I'm doing is putting in a small grid. Doesn't have to be fancy. It's definitely not perfect, but that's perfectly okay because this exercise is all about releasing and just shaking it out. So I'm going to pick up an item and just start scribbling down. And then pick up another color. If you're currently stressing about something that's going on in your life, just letting go and releasing that energy can be extremely soothing and helpful. Because this is a full body exercise. The way I do it, I stand up and I put the energy into moving my body. If standing isn't comfortable for you or it's really hard on your body, sit and do it that way, but this is how I personally prefer to do it. In fact, I'm just gonna even move my stance a little, widen my legs. Oh, I don't know if you got that on camera, but my hip just cracked. Let's do one more color. I'm feeling more peaceful now that I've done this. I'm just gonna put one more color in there because blue, I love it. It's joyous and soothing for me. So I'm gonna slow down my movements for this one, be less forceful with it. All right, now it looks like a mess, and that's perfectly okay. If you didn't use any tape and create a grid, that's fine. Just leave it as is. But what I love about doing the grid is the fact that I can pull this tape up and it feels like a finished piece. Not only does it look physically complete, but also feels complete, like the emotions have been processed by giving that chaos where I let loose and expelled the anxiety and stress onto the page. By seeing those framed results of the drawings, it just feels like I processed those emotions on that day, and it just feels right for me, at least. So try it out for yourself and see if you feel the same way as well. All right, let's move on to idea number 3. For this next one, it's a take on the previous scribble one. So we want to have some drawing materials. Personally, for this activity, I love using soft pastel colors or really translucent paint on my watercolor paintbrushes or any gouache that's really diluted down. You're also going to want to use some tape and a black pen, whether that is that Sharpie that you found in the junk drawer or an artist brush pen. So the first step will be putting a grid around it. You can skip that step if you'd like, but I personally really like having a frame around what I've created. Now I'm feeling in the moment like this might be too thick, so I'm going to use the thinner tape. Now that I've got all the border down, I'm just going to pick up a color and start to put that energy into the page. You know what? I'm feeling it like it is. I don't think I need that extra pink color. No, you know what? I need to put more blue. I'm feeling the blue. Yeah, I need that. See? Even my puppy agrees with me. All right, now that we've gotten this part out, where we've been able to release that energy, we're gonna pick up a pen and we're gonna start drawing shapes. It can be anything abstract. It could be like a weird, I don't know, kind of reminds me of like a 60s, 70s, a mood, like a lava lamp globber. And we want them to sort of touch, but not overlap. And at this point, we're going to be a little slower with our movement, less chaotic and more flowing and purposeful. By going slower at this point, we're allowed to take a moment to breathe, which lets us then further process the emotions that we might have been feeling while we were doing the chaos of the drawing in the background, releasing that energy and those emotions that we're feeling. And now we're taking a step back to breathe. At this stage, you can leave it as is, or if you see any spots that you feel like should be solid black, or whichever color you end up using, in case you, for example, don't have a black pen, but you have a really dark blue marker or something like that, you could always use that instead. But go in and fill in some of the shapes. I like how this one is a low pressure activity. Now, let's move on to idea number 4. For this next activity, all you're gonna need are some markers. Granted, I prefer to use markers for this activity, but you can technically do it with anything that you have. If all you have are paint sticks or neocolors or watercolors, that's okay. I almost forgot to mention the pencil. What I love about this activity is the fact that I can do it in any of my sketchbooks and no matter where I am. So if I'm sitting on the couch or at a doctor's appointment, I can just easily grab up my pencil and start drawing random shapes. I'm really hoping you can see the blue. The whole reason why I use the blue pencil for this is so that you can see it on camera. And it can be any kind of shape, any kind of line, but we want them to intersect with one another. When doing this, try to mix in soft shapes and hard shapes. So something that's got round, flowing edges and something that's got sharp, straight, pointy edges. It'll really add to the final piece. Now that our shapes and lines have created a bunch of new shapes and lines, we're gonna just fill them in. So this is just basic color blocking. And the activity of doing this is calming, soothing, and is kind of like a meditative act of just freeing your mind, focusing on the act itself of just coloring in these shapes and spaces. I enjoy this activity so much that honestly, I do use it almost every other day. I enjoy the act of just repetitive motion of drawing and pulling the marker down to fill in the shape. What I like so much about it is the fact that you can create the same basic shapes over and over and over again, but when you're overlapping them with different shapes and different parts of the page, no matter what your creation looks like, in the end, it'll always look different. Even if you're using the same squiggly line and the same lightning bolts, if you place them in different parts of the page every single time you do it, it'll always look different. Okay, I'm not really feeling this color palette. So what's kind of cool about this exercise is that it's also a great way to experiment and play with layering. So you can layer colors on top and see what kind of colors you get. I've also loved that since I've started doing this on a regular basis, I've learned a lot about myself where it comes to the colors I gravitate towards, because I have found that I really do have a set color palette that brings me joy, a set color palette that makes me feel calmer. So when you're doing this, you'll learn a lot about your own personal preferences versus maybe other artists that you're seeing and you're thinking, oh, those are cool colors, I wish I used those colors. And if you try to use them in this kind of exercise, you might learn that they aren't the colors for you, but you will find the colors that are right for you. Does that make sense what I just said? You know what? That's okay if it doesn't. Let's move on to idea number 5. For this next one, all you're going to need is a single black pen, but if you'd like, you can use more than one. What we're going to be doing is neographic art, and I feel like every time I say that word, it never comes out right. Neographic art. I am a huge fan of using this, especially when I'm feeling stressed and I need to relax and calm down. All you need to do is have a pen, start at some point on the page. I'm going to start here and move your arm, intersect the lines, and pull the page off. You can make this as intricate as you'd like it to be, and you can do sharp edges, circular shapes, anything you'd like. But once you get to this stage, what you're going to do is at each intersecting point is you're going to round out those edges like so. And then once you've done that for all the intersecting areas, you're going to fill it in. Now, at this stage, you can leave it as is if you like, or you can fill in each section with a solid color. I love using my markers for this, but you can use your watercolors, your paints, whatever you have on hand. But there are days when I love to go a little extra, when I have that time and that energy and that need to continue with expanding it. And so that's what I'm sharing with you today, and that is to create texture and detail within the bubbles. So playing with patterns by doing minor patterns like dots and lines and circles and squares. It's a continuous on that whole meditative state of keeping yourself out of your head and doing something that is repetitive, and it really is helpful. For me, in my case, I love using this form of meditative art when I'm doing iron infusions. I've posted a video about this before, but I find doing this extra with the texture and the details, just that added little boost, especially when I'm in situations where I want to focus less on the environment around me and more on relaxing my mind. All right. Let's go on to idea number 6. For this next one, all you're going to need is some paint, one paintbrush, and some tape. Again, for this one, you will want to have water on the side so that you can clean your paintbrush, and I've pre-wet my paint palette once again. So the first things first is to put your border down for your tape. Couldn't remember the word for tape there for a second. Once you have your border down, take your tape and put it at different angles. And then, if you'd like, put in a couple of more spots. Now that you've got everything taped, just dive right into your watercolor and just paint a line. Dip into another color, paint a line, maybe same color, I don't know, maybe some blue now. What's fun about this is the fact that when you just dip into one color into the next, you kind of get different color mixes. So it's a great way to learn your watercolor, but it also just like is really soothing. You don't have to really worry about what kind of colors you're gonna get. Because sometimes just thinking about mixing colors can be really stressful, because like, what if you don't mix it correctly? What if you're like, oh, what if I don't like it? This way, we're not even thinking about it. We're just doing it. And it's okay if your lines aren't perfect. What I really enjoy about this kind of exercise in a sketchbook isn't just the fact that it's a low pressure, easy to do activity, but any level of artist can do it. Whether you've never picked up watercolor paint before, or you love to use watercolor and you're like, I'm a flower expert. It's great for everyone. At this stage, I recommend letting this dry before you take the tape off, either by setting it aside and coming back to it later, or by manually drying it with a hair dryer or one of those heat devices for crafting. My reasoning for this is because the tape is going to be really wet, you can, get your fingers really dirty, and that's only a personal preference thing. If you don't mind getting dirty, peel the tape off now. On to idea number 7. Now for this one, all you're gonna need is some paint again and a paintbrush. I'll be using my gouache paint. You can use watercolors, acrylics, anything that you have on hand. So I've pre-wet and pre-mixed my paint already on a palette prior to starting, just to make this process a lot easier. So I definitely recommend doing that for yourself as well. I have 2 colors, a blue and a light blue. And what we're going to be doing is just dipping into one of the colors and putting a dot. Dip into another color, put a dot. Dip, dot, dip, dot, 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 dip, dot. So basically we're just going to be making these shapes with our paintbrush on the page itself as a continuous line, filling the whole page. Doing something like this can be extremely soothing because there's literally no expectation. All you're doing is a repetitive motion of picking up paint or putting your brush down in a single line. We're not worrying about if these colors are mixing properly. We're not worried about the pattern in which we're doing this in. We're just going. If you would like to consciously put a pattern in place, you can, but I find the act of just doing this is soothing. Each page you make like this in your sketchbook can be vastly different depending on the paintbrush that you use. And what I love about these pages is the fact that I can rip them out of my sketchbook and then use it later down the road for scrapbooking or layering when I'm doing my mixed media creations, they have multiple purposes. Not only can it be used as a relaxation and an easy exercise, but I can use it for so many things down the road. I can even leave it in the sketchbook and paint on top of it. The possibilities are endless, and it's just a great way to create as well. I really do hope that today's 7 activities do help you find relaxation when working in your sketchbook in a low pressure way. I know I just mentioned how with this exercise, I really like to cut it up and use it for my mixed media, scrapbooking type artwork. But hear me out. All the exercises that we've done here today have multiple purposes and things that you can do with them beyond what I just showed you. So with this exercise, if you want, you can go in and draw on the lines or in the spaces in between, or cut this up and use it for your scrapbooking and mixed media purposes. You can do the same thing with this one. If you decided not to do the funny faces like I did today, do what you find sparks inspiration and just go with it. All right, so we've reached the end of today's video, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching this. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in using art as a tool towards healing, hit that subscribe button. All right, once again, thank you so much. And until next time, stay magical.